Hello class, George again, and this is the global economy assignment. So I got a pretty cool country that I didn't know a lot about. I had heard of before, but took this as an opportunity to find out a lot more information about, and that's the country of Kuwait. So let's kind of get into it. Some basic information. They have a population of 4.6 million people. They have an unemployment rate, a very low unemployment rate at only 2.1%, and a GDP of $306.4 billion. Another kind of cool general fact is the whole country is only about 7,000 square miles. And to put that into perspective, the state of New Jersey is bigger than the country of Kuwait. So it's a very small country in the Middle East. Um, One thing that I learned about their business laws is that bribing foreign officials is actually not a criminal offense. And actually, even though bribing a non-foreign official, like a Kuwait citizen to a Kuwait citizen, even though that is illegal, it's very, very common there, and they actually have a very large problem with government corruption. And one of the reasons that that is the, if I butcher any of these names, I apologize, but the Al Sabah dynasty, so the Al Sabah family has ruled over as the emir or head of state, monarch, whatever you want to think of it as. They've ruled over as the emir of Kuwait since the 1700s. Now, one of the reasons they're having such a problem with corruption is the Emir of Kuwait appoints all of the judges in the country. Now, that would pose a problem because they would have a super big influence on the lawmaking process and the enforcement of these laws. And they've actually had kind of a political uprising in the past few years over that. So, one kind of cool thing about their economy is 80% of the working age citizens are employed by the government. Now that sounds like a huge number, and it is, but you shouldn't think of 80% of the Kuwait population working at a desk in a town hall or anything. So Kuwait actually has a government-owned and operated oil company called the Kuwait Oil Company, or KOC, and that's where they get the main portion of their exports, and it's like I said, where 80% of the working age people are employed. So that's a huge part of their government. Another kind of cool, interesting thing is citizens' income is not taxed at all. So foreign businesses are one of the only ones that are taxed at a flat 15% rate. And just from that flat 15% rate, that comes to about 1.5% of their total yearly income, which is pretty cool. Um, One thing that's relevant to the other assignment we had this week was their debt to GDP ratio is very, very low compared to the US. So they have a debt to GDP ratio of only 26%. And according to the US debt clock that I checked today, the US has a 131% debt to GDP ratio. So they're doing a lot better when it comes to that. So taking a look at their exports and imports, their exports, as you might have guessed already, the main one is oil. Um, they export about $54 billion a year, mainly in oil, with South Korea and China being their main export partners. As far as imports, they're importing mainly food, vehicles, construction material, and clothing. And they're mainly doing that with China and the US. So they're pretty much just pumping out oil to all over the world and really just purchasing clothes, food, that kind of thing. As far as outsourcing, the only thing that I can find is they do have some kind of data entry IT companies that are outsourced to the US, so like call centers, that kind of thing. But they really don't outsource that much just because they're making so much money on the oil industry. So, some socio-cultural stuff. Their main religion is Islam. Arabic is their official language, and their currency is called the Kuwait dinar. And like I say, if I mispronounce that, I apologize, but it is actually one of the highest valued units of currency in the world. And according to the World Bank, Kuwait is the seventh richest country in the world per capita. So the oil industry is definitely doing them good as far as their financial side. I would also say Kuwait has a pure market economy just because they rely so much on the prices of oil, which can fluctuate so much, and especially with, excuse me, the rise of electricity and other types of fuel becoming more prevalent. They definitely have a weakness there just because of how heavily they rely on these oil prices. So yeah, Kuwait was a very interesting company just to kind of, or country just to kind of go back over what I said. Kuwait was a very interesting country. They're making a ton of money off oil, which can be looked at as a strength or weakness when you look at kind of future and how they're going to do in a further climate. But yeah, and then one little fun fact for the end is they drive on the right side of the road, just like us, which is unique over there in Europe and Asia. So they drive on the right side of the road. All right.